everyone. Thank you to the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs and InnovatorMD for having me here to speak to you today. My name is Mike Anderson. I'm a growth manager with IntelliVisit. It's an AI-powered asynchronous virtual care platform for urgent care, primary care, and even the ER. Many of us have seen how companies have been scaling on this convenience model. Healthcare delivery, particularly in the delivery and treatment of minor illness, has been lagging, which, as many of you know, is no surprise. Healthcare is very complicated, multifaceted. It requires a high-cost workforce to be able to push people through in receiving treatment. So in 2015, we began work on this platform. We developed IntelliVisit, AI plus humans platform to optimize patient triage, diagnosing, and routing. We've completed 8,000 visits thus far in both Illinois and Wisconsin with 2 clinic partners. We've now finished our prototype and are now looking to scale up. There's 2 primary components to the platform. For the consumer, it's a phone app where they input their initial information, create an account, put in their payment information, and then are able to log a visit and input their symptoms. Providers have their own portal as well, or a care queue, as you can see, where they can actually receive patient cases from all over their state or multiple states. The portal is usually staffed by a single nurse practitioner who's capable of going through hundreds of cases a day. On average, it takes about, from the data that we've gone through so far, about 7 minutes to collect patient information and symptom information, and that's collected through the form of a dynamic medical interview. They start with 3 symptoms, and then the AI from those symptoms will begin to narrow in on potential diagnoses. The clinician response is usually about 12 minutes, and that's in the form of either asking questions directly through the app, treating the patients through the app with a prescription, or routing them to a clinic if more testing or physical examination is needed. Each case, so on the provider side, when they open a case, includes diagnostic suggestions from our AI, each with a diagnostic differential score of between 1 and 10. And we're able to do that with our AI. It drives that initial medical interview. And as many of you heard, AI is going to change many things in healthcare delivery, but it's only as good as the data it pulls from. Ash Domlay, the creator of our AI, had this in mind when he put it together. He worked with a team of physicians in over 37,000 hours to focus in on 40,000 symptoms, 4,000 diagnoses, as well as tying in lab test procedures, all for a wide age range of 0 to 99. So while the actual AI is helping to diagnose and recognize minor illness, it has the capability of recognizing a very wide range of potential illnesses. So right now we're working with 2 clinics, as I mentioned, in Illinois, Wisconsin, an on-site clinic in Wisconsin and a primary care office in Illinois. We've completed over 8,000 visits, and of those, 70% were treated 100% asynchronously, meaning they never spoke for video or anything with a clinician directly. Of those, that 70%, 75% included a prescription. Very quickly, physicians were able to get themselves comfortable to actually make a diagnosis with a prescription. And there have been over 130 emergency cases, including one patient who was going through the medical interview while they were having a stroke, and it was identified and they received the proper care. As I mentioned, it can be staffed by a single nurse practitioner, usually on a 12-hour shift. We offer the platform in 2 models, an enterprise model for the urgent cares and primary cares of the world, which is great for integrating and connecting multiple offices for routing. And then we're actually launching with our first individual physician who's standing up their own virtual care practice in Texas next month. Our team is made up primarily of lifetime IT consultants, data scientists, and practicing physicians. As to point a few out individually, Ash Domlay is the creator of our AI and a board member and investor. And then Jeff Miller, our CEO, has spent 25 years in IT consulting and projects. So right now we're in the middle of raising $2.5 million. About 60% is already spoken for. Looks like we're going to close primarily with private investors. We're currently looking for provider partners and as well as potential investors. Whereas others, I think the core, since many of you are probably familiar with telehealth providers, many of them that are using AI have you kind of begin your own visit and then go down a simple algorithm to zero in on something like pink eye, as opposed to taking a very broad-based approach and then working backwards from there to be able to rule out a much wider range of potential diagnoses. Thank you.
Okay, so I know we have the guru of tele-psychiatry, Dr. Sridhar, so he'll start with the first question.
How do you protect the providers from malpractice? Because you want to attract, get a good aggregation of providers. So how do you, what's the plan? Because I would assume most insurers or states would be a little bit terrified of this, but it's probably got a lot of scientific validity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and oh yes, protecting the providers that are using it and kind of given the breakdown of what the AI is doing versus what the physician is actually diagnosing. And that's where this is meant to be kind of an aggregator of the initial information, but a lot of times they'll go through and ask their own questions. They can also create their own custom diagnosis. It's not meant or doesn't require them to choose from that list that we provide. It's more so just a way to collect information. So at the end of the day, they control fully the prescription and the treatment that's selected, and usually that's enough for them to be able to issue a treatment.
So this is a repurposing the Lumiata technology on the back end?
Yes.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know Ash was doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there particular areas where this, because I know about how that was built, and it's not, there's always areas where there's blind spots in the AI. Where do you think the blind spots are that you guys might be missing? I mean, you have only seen a small number of patients actually, so I think that with any AI technology, we have to be careful that there are subgroups and stratifications that are missed in the initial analysis that may come up later on in real world. So how are you keeping track of that? How are you making sure you're not having a systematic miss in your AI?
We try to, making sure the validity of the AI and how it's taking in the information and how are we spotting blind spots through the process.
Yeah, go ahead.
And in that process, so it's a consistent kind of trial and error. So right now, when we work with a provider, we form a clinical panel where they, through the process while it's working actively, they can flag specific, it was strange, why didn't it ask this question? Why did it ask this question? So it's meant to constantly, both on its own, learn from the questions and treatments that are issued, but also meeting weekly to be able to go through the cases themselves. So we understand that once we hit a volume of hundreds of thousands of visits, it's going to be much more optimized, but until we get there, it's more of a manual process.
And where do you guys think you fit in the FDA's guidance around clinical decision support tools? Are you going to probably fall within that regulation?
I would have to follow up with you on that question. I'm not sure what that.
They've instituted certain standards for things that operate as self-contained AI and clinical decision support, which I think may fall within those regulatory framework. You may want to make sure about that.
Mm-hmm. I can definitely follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Kencore Health is an AI-powered, personalized patient engagement platform. So in healthcare, there are actually two sets of problems. You can put one into the category of, like the gentleman spoke earlier, a new device, new cure for a particular disease, or a mechanism or process in which you're actually reducing the cost of the delivery. We fall into the second category. We're focusing there where is focusing on the cost of the delivery. So healthcare, the numbers are pretty much, everybody in the room is aware of 3.5 trillion in healthcare costs, keeps going up and up and again. And, oh, okay, all right. So I was trying to look there. So, but in which 70% of the cost is actually related to the chronic conditions that it's about like 2 to 3% of the patient population have. So 1 in 4 Americans have health conditions, and monitoring them today is an inefficient process, which is where our focus is. And also, when you talk about the chronic conditions, the typical population that's in is over 65, Probably they are living alone and they are not technically savvy. For patients, we put together what we call a SAMI, a virtual companion. It's a conversational engine that can actually converse with patients in any kind of medium that they are comfortable with. Could be a bot, could be a patient portal that they are already comfortable with, could be the landline phone that they have at home, or in near future, Alexas and other voice assistants are going to be in that category as well. So you should be able to get to the patients in any form of medium of communication that the patient is comfortable with and wherever they are. And that's alone is not enough. You got to have the vital stats on a regular basis when you monitor these patients remotely. So we bundle up basic vitals like scales, blood pressure monitor, pulse oximeter. We're working on a glucometer as well as the EKG units, as well as spirometer. We continue to add that. We don't make those devices. We pick the FDA-approved devices out there, bundle them up with one caveat. As an end user, as a patient, they never have to actually deal with configuration in terms of technology, whether it could be Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. They never have to do any pairing and connection. It has to be seamless. Just drop the box in them, and they just take it and use it. The data need to seamlessly pass through. That's, we work with these vendors at the firmware level to make tighter integration of the platform so data can be collected in a seamless manner. So on a regular basis, we have created this conversation language using JavaScript. So the conversation can be delivered through any one of these medium. On a daily basis, we actually engage with the chronic care patients. We have 4 modules: CHF, diabetes, hypertension, and COPD. We have about 25 plus templates we created working with the physicians and large institutions like WVU, Duke Health, and Scripps. And we actually run those conversations on a regular basis, collect the data, and we have algorithms that were actually developed in partnership with the physician's office to process the data that is coming through and put them into what we call as a red, yellow, and green buckets. So if you're in green, SAMI is going to take care of you. If you're in yellow, we're going to engage with your patients, families, and caregivers to get them in, to kind of keep them engaged. If you're in red, that actually requires intervention from the care team. They jump in and kind of do what they need to do. In that process, our algorithms also kick in to kind of provide them the guidance and recommendations and suggestions based on what the doctors have been doing it in the past, as well as the personalized data they carry, bring them over, and essentially deliver a care remotely. So, as I said, that's what we walked through. I'm going to skip this one. So the product has already gone through all the pilots, and it's out there with 2 hospitals, 5 channel partners, and 6 clinics, and 3 clinical studies, one with ACC, one with WVU, another one at Duke. So our business model is straightforward. So we align this with a CMS reimbursement that came up in January. There's a $98 reimbursement after the copay for 2 CPT codes. So our solution aligns with that. So we actually split that 1/3 for us, 2/3 for the physician's office. It's a new revenue stream, no upfront cost for them, and end-to-end automation right from enrollment all the way to the billing, completely automated end-to-end through the process.
Okay, so Justin,
What's your current revenue? I saw you're deployed a few places, but how much are you making?
So
can
we,
you repeat the question?
the question is, how much revenue are you making now? So we have about 6 clinics and 2 hospitals already in them. Their capacity is about 3,500 Medicare patients. They already enrolled about 400 patients as of last October 1st. And this month, we are on track to have another 200 patients added to it. So $32 per patient per month is our numbers.
Those are all paid for.
They're all paid for. They're all paid for.
So, yeah, you're making me do the math here.
So we're about 5,000 last month. It's going to be about 8,000 this month.
Okay.
And with 3,500, we'll be at the 110 per month, which will be getting to our $1 million ARR, the magic mark we're chasing.